In a quiet corner of the world, a remarkable story unfolded. The protagonist, a 24-year-old American woman named Sophia, brave, wide-eyed, and endlessly curious. She chose a path few would even dare to consider, leaving everything behind to live among 15 indigenous men on a remote island in the Pacific archipelago of Vanuatu. Ever since childhood, Sophia had dreamed of exploring places untouched by modern life. That fascination eventually became an obsession: the tiny, wild islands of the South Pacific. After 2 years of saving every penny from a modest job back home, she finally scraped together enough to buy a plane ticket. Destination: Vanuatu. Despite the warnings from friends and family about spotty infrastructure and difficult travel conditions, her adventurous spirit refused to be tamed. "The more remote the place," she often said, "the more magic it holds." Vanuatu, an archipelago of more than 80 islands scattered across the ocean, was everything she'd imagined and more. Most tourists flocked to Port Vila, the capital city on the island of Ifate. But Sophia wasn't looking for beaches with bars and brochures. She wanted the raw, untouched Pacific, the places where maps grew fuzzy and stories still traveled by word of mouth. "I came this far," she whispered to herself as her plane descended. "Now I need to feel the heartbeat of the real South Pacific." She landed in Port Vila and was immediately greeted by the dizzying heat and heavy tropical air. The city was small and modest, much like other island capitals. Colorful markets, dusty roads, and locals moving with an unhurried rhythm. She checked into a tiny hostel and spent 2 days wandering the town, striking up conversations with vendors and fishermen. Though English was spoken by some, others spoke French or the local Creole Bislama. But smiles were universal and hand gestures went a long way. The Port Vila market burst with tropical fruits, seashell jewelry, and the smell of grilled seafood. The warmth of the people gave her courage. Her dream was starting to take shape. One young local told her about islands to the northeast larger, but surrounded by smaller, nearly untouched islets. Transportation? Unreliable. Boats came when they could. Sometimes weather kept them away for days. And yet, this is exactly what Sophia had hoped for. Through bits of luck and determination, she learned that a cargo ship would be passing through those northeastern islands the following week, heading toward an even smaller one. She tracked down the ship, found its grizzled captain, and begged to come aboard. The man looked her over, clearly surprised. "This trip's rough. You sure?" She nodded. "Yes, I'll take responsibility for myself." A few days later, Sophia boarded the rusty, rumbling cargo vessel in Port Vila. There were no passenger seats, just crates, barrels, construction supplies, and a handful of locals squeezed between them. The sun pounded down. Sweat dripped. It was uncomfortable, but Sophia didn't care. Her heart was soaring. "We'll take 2 days to reach the main island," the captain told her. "After that, you'll have to switch boats. But if the weather turns, who knows?" "Understood," she replied, smiling. The journey's half the adventure. 1 day and 1 night of nauseating waves later, they reached a makeshift port on the northeastern coast. There wasn't much, just a wooden dock, some tin roofs, and a few curious faces. But anchored nearby was an even smaller, battered boat. "That one's heading to Iki Island," the captain pointed. "Close to where you want to go. But there's a storm coming." Sophia hesitated. A storm? This far already, she didn't want to give up. Who knew when another chance would come? "Can we leave before it hits?" she asked. The crew shook their heads. "Even if we left now, we'd sail straight into it." Eventually, just before dawn, the boat set off, straight into the growing chaos. The sea raged, rain lashed, wind howled like a living thing. The short trip dragged into 12 agonizing hours. Even the captain struggled to steer. Curled up in the tiny cabin, Sophia clung to her backpack and prayed as the boat thrashed against the storm. Then a crash. A wave slammed the side of the vessel. Screams, shouts, orders flying in languages she didn't understand. "We can't reach Iki," someone yelled. "We're making an emergency stop." The boat lurched toward a nameless beach on a barely marked island. With great effort, the crew helped a handful of soaked, shaking passengers, including Sophia, onto land. Then the boat pulled away, swallowed by the horizon. No one could say when it would return. The beach was wild, quiet. Thick jungle loomed beyond jagged cliffs. The sky was still a blanket of angry gray. Sophia felt a surge of panic. Was she really stranded here? Other passengers quickly vanished into the trees, promising to look for help. She couldn't understand their language, but their urgency said enough. Alone now, her thin rain jacket clung to her. She fought against the wind, moving inland, clutching her backpack. A bottle of water, a little food, a mosquito net. Not much. I have to find someone, anyone, she muttered, her voice trembling. Hours passed. Her legs ached. Just when she thought she might collapse, she spotted something. Smoke curling between the trees. Following it through tangled brush, she stumbled into a clearing, simple huts with straw rooftops. A tiny village, but something caught her breath. Every face that turned toward her was male. Sophia stepped forward. The men stared back in silence, eyes wide with surprise. The village was called Mora, isolated, almost forgotten by time, and populated by just 15 men. Sophia soon learned, through a mix of broken English and gentle gestures, that these men had grown up together, many of them brothers. Years earlier, devastating typhoons and rising internal conflicts had driven the women and children to safer areas on other islands. The 15 who remained chose to stay behind, committed to protecting what little was left of their home. They survived on fishing, farming, and sheer perseverance. A young man named Nako, who spoke some English, became her bridge to the village. He explained her arrival as best he could. A foreign woman, cast ashore by a storm, stranded on their island. It was the first time any woman, let alone one from far across the sea, had ever stepped into Mora. The men eyed her with a strange mix of wonder and restraint. Yet none showed aggression. If anything, they seemed eager to help. They offered her a place to stay until the rainy season ended. "You can live here," Nako translated softly. Sophia explored Mora slowly. The village consisted of a handful of palm thatch huts, surrounded by narrow maize fields and swaying coconut trees. Old fishing boats dotted the shore, weathered and barely seaworthy. The place was cut off from the outside world. No electricity, no phones, no schedules. Sometimes a boat might pass. But if storms rolled in, they could be stuck for weeks, even months. "When will I be able to leave?" she wondered, stomach tight with uncertainty. Still, she refused to give in to despair. Communication was a challenge, and the island had no modern comforts, but the kindness of the villagers grounded her. They even promised to build her a hut of her own, and if her food ran out, they'd share theirs. With a breath of determination, Sophia thought, if I'm going to be here, I won't waste it. I'll find purpose. I'll contribute. The men were surprised but touched by her offer to help. They welcomed her into their daily routines. She worked in the fields under the tropical sun, gathered firewood from the jungle, and repaired fishing nets on the beach. Bit by bit, the villagers opened up. They smiled more. They laughed. With Nako's help, Sophia began to learn their names and their stories. There was Thomas, a man in his 40s, who had once sailed with fishing crews to distant islands and was fascinated by the outside world. Carlos, in his early 20s, had a playful streak, constantly joking with Sophia, teasing her gently in the universal language of laughter. At first, they'd mutter, "Can a woman really do all this hard work?" But when they saw her drenched in sweat, refusing to quit, they grew to admire her deeply. "Are all Americans this tough?" they joked, wide grins on their sun-darkened faces. But among the 15, one stood out. His name was Manuel. Around 30, tall, with soft eyes that spoke even when words failed. He didn't speak English, but his kindness was unmistakable. On Sophia's first cold night in the village, it was Manuel who quietly gave her his own blanket. Later, he sat beside her on the beach under a sky freckled with stars, singing old songs in a voice low and gentle. They found their own language through glances, through gestures. Sometimes Nako translated. Often they didn't need him. One day, Manuel carefully crafted a seashell necklace with his hands, then placed it around Sophia's neck. "Thank you for coming," he said with a soft smile. Sophia's heart skipped. In this remote place with no roads, no stores, and no certainty, one man made her feel something she hadn't expected. Safety, and something more. Though the men of Mora were kind, they were still adjusting to her presence. They'd lived only among themselves for years, and disputes would often arise, over whose hut belonged where, or who had rights to which part of the fishing grounds. As an outsider, Sophia had perspective. She began offering ideas. "What if we divide it this way, fairly?" To her surprise, they listened. "We've never had someone help mediate," they said, wide-eyed. Her calm, practical approach, honed from her past work in team projects and small businesses, started to change things. Her role grew. They respected her not just as a guest, but as a leader. She shared flashlights, travel tools, and first aid supplies from her backpack. They cheered in amazement. "Foreign technology's pretty useful." One of them laughed as he clicked a tiny LED light. Sophia beamed. "I can help here. I matter here." But peace was short-lived. Another storm approached, stronger than the last. This village, tucked in the path of cyclones, had learned to act fast. Roofs were reinforced. Maize was covered. Food and water were stored. Sophia, now part of the village, joined the preparations. Manuel, using hand motions, warned her. "If the cyclone hits, the winds will be violent. Be careful." Her heart pounded. She'd survived a storm before, but this was different. The sky turned slate gray. Winds howled like spirits. That night, the villagers huddled together in the central square, shivering beneath a single shelter, holding onto one another. Sophia sat among them, terrified but resolute. Thankfully, the worst passed. The roofs held. No one was hurt, but the fields, flattened. The crops, soaked and ruined. The villagers got to work, and Sophia, ankle-deep in mud, helped rebuild. Manuel stayed by her side, steady and silent, catching her when she slipped, holding her steady as she dug through wet debris. Later that evening, the storm behind them, Sophia and Manuel sat on the beach, just the two of them. The ocean whispered under the moonlight. Stars near the equator gleamed like diamonds spilled across black silk. Manuel gently reached for her hand. She startled at first, then let him hold it. They looked at each other, and in the quiet, they embraced. Sophia clutched Manuel tightly, heart racing. "How can we feel this drawn to each other?" she wondered, "when we don't even share a language or culture." But his warmth against her skin grounded her, calmed her. In that quiet moment, with the waves whispering nearby, Manuel slowly formed words in careful English. "You me special." Sophia's lips curled into a tender smile. "I like you too," she whispered, and that was enough. In a land half a world away from where she'd grown up, under a moonlit sky, a man and a woman began speaking a language deeper than words, through looks, through touch, through feeling. Their first kiss was gentle, hesitant, but full of something real. After that night, Sophia and Manuel fell into a rhythm. By day, they worked as usual, but in the quiet moments between, on a walk through the forest, under the stars on the beach, they stole time for themselves. It was like having secret dates, tucked into the fabric of island life. The villagers noticed, of course. When they saw the two holding hands or laughing softly together, they would grin knowingly. "Looks like someone's fallen." They'd tease each other. Then a change. Sophia's mornings began with waves of nausea. Her cycle never came. At first, she chalked it up to stress or exhaustion or even the food. But after nearly 2 months, she began to suspect the truth. "No, it can't be," she thought, hand trembling over her belly. "Not here. Not now." There were no pregnancy tests, no clinics, no doctors. But her body knew. Her senses shifted. Smells became too strong. Her chest ached. Her cravings strange and sudden. She was pregnant. When she told Manuel, he stared at her in stunned silence. Then his face lit up with joy. They had no shared vocabulary for everything they were feeling, but when she said the word, baby, his eyes filled with emotion. When the villagers found out, they erupted in celebration. Finally, a child. A new life in Mora. For a community of 15 men, it was more than just a surprise. It was hope. Sophia smiled with them, but inside, anxiety gripped her. There's no hospital, no prenatal care. My family is in America. Can I really do this here? The villagers meant well, but none of them had experience with childbirth. Years ago, when women still lived here, it had been the elder women who helped deliver babies. Now there were only men, and none had ever done more than witness a birth. Don't worry, they said, full of innocent confidence. We'll figure it out. Sophia stayed quiet, not wanting to dampen their spirit. But inside, she was overwhelmed. That night, as she sat by the fire, Manuel gently took her hand. With soft determination, he said, "We protect. We find way." His certainty gave her strength. Still, the question haunted her. Should I stay, or find a way to leave? Soon, the rainy season neared its end. Word came that a boat from a nearby island would be stopping by. If she boarded it, she could reach Port Vila, maybe even get medical care. Yet, the thought of leaving Manuel, of leaving this village that had embraced her, tore at her heart. Sophia spent many nights turning over her decision. Then, with a shaky voice and misty eyes, she told Manuel, "I want to have our baby here. I'm scared, but I'll face it with you." He hugged her tight. "Thank you," he whispered. "Together, we strong." The village came alive with purpose. They formed a birth preparation committee, 15 men, all determined to help. They stored food and fresh water. One man, Paco, in his 50s, claimed to have once seen a birth and took charge of passing on what little he remembered. "The mother must eat well and rest," he said, repeating it like gospel. The first few months were rough. Sophia's nausea often left her drained. But the villagers took care of her. They brought her tropical fruits, cool coconut water, and starchy vegetables to keep her strong. The younger men dashed around with wet cloths and handmade fans whenever she looked pale. And Manuel, he never left her side. Day and night, he sat with her, held her hand, wiped her brow, and watched over her with the gentleness of someone who had already become a father in his heart. They didn't have doctors or machines, but they had each other, and they believed, truly believed, that would be enough. By the 4th month, Sophia's belly began to show. The villagers would marvel, reaching out curiously to feel the life growing inside her. "There's really a baby in there?" they'd whisper wide-eyed. Her body adapted, and though she no longer did heavy work, she still helped where she could, sorting vegetables, shelling coconuts, humming while she sat beside Manuel as he repaired fishing nets. To the villagers, the two were already a family. No one questioned it. No papers, no ceremony, just love. In the village center, the men constructed a makeshift birthing shelter from wood, cloth, and whatever else they could find. They debated where to place it, eventually agreeing on a spot sheltered from the wind, near a fire pit for warmth. Each night, Manuel and Sophia would lie side by side, hands resting on her belly, feeling their child kick and roll. They'd talk about silly things, smile in the moonlight, and dream of the day their baby would arrive. They didn't need perfect words, just the beat of two hearts. "I'll do everything I can," Sophia would whisper. "We'll make sure this baby comes into the world safe." Manuel would nod and smile, pressing his forehead gently against hers. Sometimes, Sophia would blink at the stars and think, "Am I really going to give birth? Here? On a remote Pacific island?" But then she'd look around, at the men hammering wood, at Manuel cooking fish, at the laughter in the air, and feel something stronger than fear. She felt belonging. She felt love. If she ever returned to America, she knew the world would feel colder, louder, faster, more distant. Out there, she was just another face in the crowd. But here, she was Sophia, the heart of Mora. What would my parents say, Sophia chuckled to herself, if they knew I was getting married and having a baby here? She laughed, but the thought lingered. There was no way to contact them. No clear path back to her old life. It was as if fate had planted her roots in this place. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to accept it. As the final trimester arrived, everything became heavier. Her steps, her breath, her thoughts. Her back ached, her feet swelled, and each day seemed longer than the last. But the villagers doubled their efforts. They debated the best herbs to ease pain and how to keep the mother-to-be calm and safe. Paco, remembering bits and pieces from when his wife gave birth decades ago, became the unofficial expert. Boil water, gather clean cloths, and when the baby comes, cut the cord carefully. He instructed, trying to recall every detail the elder women once passed down. They weren't professionals, not even close, but their worry was real. Sophia, seeing how much they cared, was deeply moved. They're all worried. For me, she thought, her heart full. Manuel never left her side. Always here, he whispered often, brushing her hair back gently. She would hold her round belly and murmur, "Please be healthy. Please come safely. I couldn't bear to lose you, not here." Then, one night without warning, pain. Sharp, sudden, paralyzing. Sophia cried out, breathless, as contractions gripped her. The village flew into action. They carried her to the makeshift birthing hut, Manuel gripping her hand so tightly she could barely feel her fingers. The pain was relentless. Hours passed. Sweat poured down her face. She screamed with each wave of agony. The men outside paced and prayed, their faces pale with fear. Paco stayed close, calm on the outside, but inside he was terrified. "You're doing great," he said softly. "Just a little more." Finally, a head appeared. Gasps filled the room. Manuel held her hand tighter. One final cry tore from Sophia's lungs. And then, the cry of a baby. Loud, strong, alive. Cheers erupted across the village. It was the loudest sound Mora had heard in years. Paco, hands trembling, cut the cord. The others carefully wrapped the newborn in warm towels. Sophia, dizzy and drained, heard the baby's wail. A single tear slipped down her cheek. "Our baby, he's alive." Beside her, Manuel wept openly, gently caressing her face. By morning, joy soaked through every corner of the village. The cries of a newborn echoed through the trees for the first time in generations. They threw a modest celebration. No elaborate customs, just pure, shared happiness. Fruits, roasted meats, songs, and clumsy dancing. Sophia, still recovering, joined quietly, cradling her son beside Manuel. The villagers argued playfully over the baby's name. Sophia offered a suggestion. "What if we combine a name from both our cultures?" She smiled. "In Spanish, Mateo. And in your language." Naco spoke up. "Nabu. It means light from the sea." Mateo Nabu. Manuel beamed and nodded. It was perfect. That night, as Sophia held their sleeping son, she looked at Manuel. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their eyes said everything. A child. Here, on a forgotten island in the middle of the Pacific. And he's ours. Weeks passed. Sophia regained her strength little by little. The villagers, fishermen, builders, farmers, took turns helping with the baby. Though clumsy at first, they were gentle, devoted. Whenever the baby cried, someone came running with a towel or toy or lullaby in a broken voice. It made Sophia laugh through tears. With limited food, breastfeeding was vital, and thankfully Sophia had enough milk. Her health rebounded. Each time she nursed her child, someone stroked her hair or fanned her. They'd say, "Now our village finally feels like a family." Mateo Nabu thrived, chubby, wide-eyed, and always surrounded by warm hands and smiling faces. There were no clinics, no vaccines, no monitors, but somehow he never got sick. To Sophia, it felt like a miracle. More than a year had passed. She sat one day under the shade of a coconut tree, baby nestled in her arms, watching him toddle clumsily on chubby legs. "I've really grown roots here," she thought. "When he runs, he'll run through forests instead of city sidewalks. He'll know the taste of rainwater and the lullaby of waves." She and Manuel lived as husband and wife in every sense but ceremony. To the villagers, they were already a family. Mateo was everyone's child. A nephew, a little brother, a sign of renewal. But the outside world still loomed in Sofia's mind. Communication was still nearly impossible. Boats rarely came. When they did, Sofia would pass handwritten letters to the crew and beg them to deliver them. She didn't know if her parents ever received them. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay. And I've had a son." As months went on, the scarcity of supplies became harder to ignore. Food stretched thin. Daily essentials had to be rationed. And now, with a child, Sofia longed for something more secure. Maybe, she thought, we could create something here. Something sustainable. She proposed an idea to the villagers: use their natural resources to make handcrafted goods. Coconut shell jewelry, dried tropical snacks, even small cultural tours showcasing local dances and traditions. At first, the men hesitated. But, will tourists ever come this far? Sofia smiled. The ocean here is a painting. The forest sings. People will come if we build the path. Inspired, the village held meetings. The men started modifying their boats, considering new ways to welcome outsiders. Not with grandeur, but with sincerity. They wouldn't turn Mora into a resort. They would share it carefully, proudly. All they needed was a chance. Word soon came that relief boats occasionally passed through nearby islands. And for the first time in a long while, hope set sail. One morning, everything changed. A ship, one of the humanitarian aid boats people only whispered about, appeared near the beach. The villagers ran toward it, calling out with excitement. Sofia joined them. The international NGO crew had no idea this village even existed. But they froze in surprise when they saw her. A foreign woman holding a child, walking toward them with calm confidence. "A Spanish woman? Living here?" one asked, stunned. "What happened?" Sofia shared her story. In broken English and careful pauses, she explained everything. The storm, the village, her child. They listened, slack-jawed. "You've been completely cut off," the team leader said. "You need medical assistance." The crew stayed for a time, providing basic checkups. Thankfully, Sofia and her baby were healthy. But they warned of potential malnutrition and infection risks. They treated the men, donated medicine and supplies, and even left some food behind. The village cheered like it was New Year's Eve. Then came the question. "We can take you and the baby back to Port Vila. Do you want to go?" Sofia hesitated. Her heart wrenched in two directions. Her son's father, Manuel, was here. Her new family, too. But so were her parents, far away. Would her child be better off in the capital with doctors and schools? Or here, wrapped in love under island skies? Manuel looked into her eyes. "You want go?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "I just want a future for us." That night she thought hard. And by morning her decision was clear. "I'm staying," she told the rescue team. "Thank you, but this is our home." They nodded in quiet respect, unable to fully understand, but recognizing the conviction in her voice. On the beach, as the boat pulled away, Sofia stood watching, tears falling freely. Is this truly the right choice? She asked herself. But she'd already chosen, and she wasn't going back on it. By her son's first birthday, life had settled. He was everyone's child, loved by each of the 15 men. Sofia's daily routine was filled with purpose. Caring for her family, preparing meals, sharing laughter. She and Manuel lived in a humble hut, their bond as strong as any marriage. They shared every moment, every worry, every joy. The villagers protected their home fiercely, from nature's wrath, and from rare threats like poachers. Sofia felt safe here. In Spain, she thought life was speed and stress. Here, it's trust, this cooperation. There were still struggles, supply shortages, no communication. But she'd never felt more human. And her child? Radiantly happy. Through the aid ship and occasional Port Vila contacts, the village began exporting small goods. Coconut crafts, dried fruit snacks, handmade wooden carvings. Sofia managed the packaging and labels. Their products, unique and filled with story, were a surprise hit at local tourist markets. A flavor only the island can make, one vendor said. A real piece of Vanuatu. For the first time, the village had a little income. It went toward medicine, baby supplies, basic comforts. The village felt alive. 2 years passed. The village had changed. It wasn't just 15 men anymore. The boy, now a curious, energetic toddler, brought laughter wherever he went. Some of the men even tried to reconnect with women from other islands. Sophia helped, hoping more families would form, more children would laugh. Slowly, Mora was being reborn. When her son turned 3, Sophia finally had a chance to visit Spain. A ship headed to Port Vila was making a stop. From there, she could fly to Europe, take care of business, and bring back much-needed supplies. It was an essential trip. When she told the village, sadness swept through. "You're really going?" they asked. "Will you come back?" Manuel and the child considered going too. But the journey was long and the boy was too small. Manuel couldn't leave the island for so long either. So Sophia made the difficult decision. She'd go alone. On the day of her departure, the entire village gathered at the shore. Manuel held their son close. He hugged Sophia hard, his tears falling onto her shoulder. Then, in a joyful gesture, the men lifted her into the air, tossing her gently above their heads. "Our captain," they laughed. "Our Sophia." She smiled through tears. 2.5 years. This is my family now. Trusting Manuel to care for their son, she stepped onto the small boat. As it pulled away, hands waved. Her child stretched out his tiny fingers, shouting, "Mama!" Sophia held back a sob, smiling and crying all at once. The boat sailed away. Her heart stayed behind. She would return. Soon, with new supplies, with strength, with hope. That sun-drenched village in Vanuatu, surrounded by waves and warmed by love, had changed her life forever. Who would have thought? She wondered that an impulsive journey would become a miracle. Though this story ends here, it marks the beginning of something more. On that remote Pacific island, the sound of a child's laughter rises with the tide. The smiles of a once-forgotten village grow stronger, day by day. And maybe, just maybe, the world is changed quietly by people who choose love. Thank you for watching. If the story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Together, let's share light and protect it.